So good morning, everyone. Good afternoon to those of you here in Europe. Good evening for our guests in Asia Pacific. Very happy to be opening up our second day of the next summit today. My name is Tim White. I am heading up our digital commercial efforts here at Teva Pharmaceuticals, although for the sake of today's meeting, I think I'll be basically speaking on my own behalf. The title of the presentation today and what I hope to talk with you through over the next 15 minutes or so is really about driving digital transformation beyond buzzwords. It's something many of you probably have gotten quite used to, hearing the different trends and buzzwords and hot topics, and largely a lot of the things that were discussed throughout the meeting yesterday. But really the key word and hopefully what you'll be able to take away from my presentation today is really about value. So this is actually, the first time I've spoken publicly at one of these summits for quite a while, and one of the reasons why I kind of stopped actually 5-6 years ago was I realized that there was this increasing disconnect in the worlds that we're operating in as part of this, basically this summit, sort of the thought leaders in digital transformation, omnichannel, whatever you want to call, and all of these topics that we were talking about and all the excitement around things happening in the pharma commercial space. And then kind of when you'd go back to the office and you'd talk with your colleagues and you'd kind of realize that, actually there's a reality gap between what we've been talking about and actually what's really been delivered. And I think why what I wanted to do today, basically over the course of these next 15 minutes, was to talk about ways in which I use to actually try and close this gap, to try and translate all the opportunities and the exciting things that we've been hearing about actually into real value for our customers, for our patients, and importantly, and we shouldn't shy away from our corporations, from our P&L, if you will, as well. And so the first thing that I think, and it's interesting actually, as I even was preparing for this presentation, is really about communication itself and the way in which we communicate these things. And it was actually someone who wrote when I posted on LinkedIn about this session, they found irony in the fact that I was, speaking about a topic about buzzwords, about digital transformation, because digital transformation in itself is a buzzword. And so the first thing and the recommendation that I have, and really almost a point of note, is to be crystal clear about exactly what you mean. And I think with digital transformation, we can all, probably all of you, I don't know how many hundreds of people we have on the summit now, probably have an idea in your head of what it means. But the reality is that's probably all quite different from the other person in the group. And just to prove that fact, I looked online and I sort of did a search and came across a number of different companies, very highly respected groups, Gartner, MIT, Salesforce, and of course, Wikipedia, our first choice usually to go to define something. And not surprisingly, I found various different definitions of what digital transformation is. And that in itself is a problem, because if you're trying to drive value from an organization and everybody has a slightly different view of what that means and what that value looks like, then you are often going to run into missed expectations or challenges. So again, the first thing I really suggest here in order to deliver value from digital transformation is basically start by effectively defining it, if you will. And the second point in that, if you're to kind of break down to the next level, is define, so this is actually what it means for me, I guess I should say, and by no means is this the only thing, as I said, or the only way of defining it. But for me, at least, this is how I define it, which is the acceleration of digital technology development and adoption, which subsequently drives the acceleration of business model change. So as technology moves faster and it becomes more adopted, as we saw obviously through the COVID period as well, in terms of adoption, this then is driving change in business model. So the next question then is, what does this business model change actually look like? And in pharmaceuticals, of course, if you say digital transformation, even within your business, and even if you define it as this, it can still mean many different things to many different people. And so I think the next step down is to actually define what does it mean for you, and what does it mean for the type of the value or the part of the value chain that you're actually applying this to? Let's face it. I mean, digital is having a profound impact on life sciences. Look at how fast we were able to develop new vaccines for COVID in this last year. And I would say, while not digital wasn't at the heart of that, if you actually dug a little bit into some of the companies and the technologies that they were using, it's a lot of the things we've been talking about these days about, high powering computers, being able to discover new drugs, discover new targets, in much more rapid fashion, through to manufacturing, through to digital products, and finally through to commercial, the area which I know for this summit, at least, what we're primarily talking about today. But again, the reason I stress this is if you are trying to drive a digital transformation, I found personally, I will get emails from vendors or even from within our business saying, Tim, here's an interesting piece of digital technology, totally not applicable to what I'm working on or what the strategy is. But again, that's just from the fact that the organization is unclear about what these things actually mean. So critically define what you're talking about. In our case, in Teva, of course, we're talking about commercial transformation and really driving value through improved customer experiences, around the world. And the final part of that, of my first recommendation, if you will, which is all around communication, if you can't tell, is tie this and your digital strategy and transformation as closely to value as you possibly can in how you define it. Now, I did a little bit of research again, and I will not, you can see I've not quoted the offenders there on the left, but these are all actually from either interviews with CDOs or heads of digital, or directly actually from the annual reports of major companies, major life sciences companies. And the ones on the right actually largely are the same, and in some cases were just some discussions that I had with some senior leaders. But again, what you see is there's these elements, very fluffy, very buzzed. Digital transformation will be the game changer for us. It will help us to compete in the 21st century. The goal of our transformation is to find innovative ways of delivering value for patients. What does this actually mean? What is this? How is this adding value? And on the other hand, other ones which are very tightly tied to the strategy. Digital transformation will help us cut the tech transfer process in half. You can imagine this was a contract manufacturing organization. It was not a full service pharma company, but still very tied to what they're trying to achieve from a business perspective. Our digitally transformed commercial model will allow us to launch 3 new assets around the world in the next half decade with the cost base that we would have previously used for one. These are things that you can get the whole organization behind. They understand why you're doing it. It takes away immediately this idea of this nebulous digital transformation, and it actually delivers it very much at the core of the business strategy. So I hope you can understand my first point pretty clearly. In order to basically sort of move from buzzwords to value, start by defining what those things mean. Start by defining overall what transformation is for you, what part of the value chain you apply it to, and finally at the end, tie that as closely as you possibly can to your business. Now, the second main point, and this is really around commercial, is focus on how these things actually build stronger relationships. Now, if we think about any go-to-market model, any sales and marketing approach for any corporation or any business sector basically around the world, relationships between brand and customer are actually at the heart of that. And what you're trying to do is, of course, create loyalty. You're trying to reach more customers. You're trying to have all of these different levers of value effectively around a relationship. And I don't think we should shy away from that. I'm not talking about, going back to the days when it was all about, trying to just have a coffee and talk about football with the customer. I'm talking about next level value and what, a valued relationship actually looks like. And so one of the things that, I look to a lot is actually how you can very quickly take a filter of, does this thing that I'm trying to create, does this thing that I'm trying to implement, does this sexy new piece of technology that we want to bring in-house, does this actually in the end deliver a stronger relationship between our customers and our brand? And if the answer is no to that, then there's a real high likelihood that in the end, your efforts will be misguided. And actually, you'll get trapped in the obsession of trying to implement something very innovative at the cost of actual value. And so as much as I loved all the points yesterday, and I know there were a lot of speakers around things like using AI to do next best action and targeted, messaging and right message at right time, all of those things actually need to be first and foremost passed through that filter of, is this building a stronger relationship? It can be a digital relationship, it can be an analog relationship, but is it being used to actually create a stronger relationship? And if you do this, I think it becomes much easier for the entire organization to get behind it, and it also becomes much easier to actually reflect value, because stronger relationships historically lead to stronger performance financially. The third point, I think, for me, which is really critical, is actually a little bit in terms of how I believe, roles like mine and organizations like mine and digital teams, if you will, CDOs, all of these new parts of the business that have been growing in years past can support this change and really support to drive value. And if I reflect back sort of half a decade ago, maybe a bit more, there was this big push towards building these disruptive units outside of the core business to try and build value for the company and then to integrate back in. And largely speaking, and I'm certainly welcome to be challenged on the chat or through any other means that you want to reach me, I think these largely didn't deliver the transformation that we hoped and the embrace of what digital could offer in terms of business value for companies. And so what I find is, avoid building a COE, a center of excellence, that in itself becomes self-serving. Try and focus on solving actual business and customer challenges. Work with your markets. Empower all parts of your organization with learning opportunities. I find a lot in our sector, we immediately jump to, the sales rep needs to be trained up to manage digitally. Actually, senior leadership needs to be trained up on how to lead digitally, because it's a very different method of thinking in terms of being customer centric. And yes, again, another buzzword, but really thinking about that relationship first and how you can use digital to solve problems. So the third point to that, and especially when dealing with leadership, is set goals that then you can understand, that the organization can understand and influence. And I'm not talking about goals and KPIs here like click-through rates and optimizing media spends and things. I'm here talking about again, take that strategic goal that you have with your digital transformation and decode that into a few key things that can actually make their way into your leadership's objectives. And if that's able to happen, then what you actually find is the true word starts to live itself, transformation. The organization actually starts to change itself, not something coming in off to the side, looking almost to disrupt the organization, but the organization actually being able to evolve into something newer and certainly much more healthier and fit for purpose for the future. So again, enable your decision makers. Don't build that COE silo. I know it's incredibly attractive to sort of say, okay, the world's going digital. We need to have more digital teams. We need to have more of a digital organization. But in reality, I think what we need to do is help our organizations to become more digitally minded. And the final point here that I have, and this is a very practical tool that actually I've worked with a lot in the last bit of time, and my overall group here, we work with these sorts of tools, and maybe in itself, again, it's a bit of a buzzword, but is this concept of futurism. And the idea here is, and I know Dario said yesterday in the opening, we can't predict the future. But as my colleague Julien Caragliati is our head of strategy and engagement here at Teva, he always says the customer of tomorrow is actually here today. So we do actually have a pretty good sense of how our customers will want to interact for the foreseeable future. We can have a sense in terms of the trends and where they're headed and what expectations they have. And so if you can actually project yourself, your organization, into that view, into the sort of 3, 5, 7-year horizon, and then actually say, okay, well, if that's what the world will look like, if that's how we want to be interacting with our customers, what do we actually have to do today or tomorrow to make that happen? And why this is such a critical tool to work with is because it really, truly helps you avoid just going down that rabbit hole of chasing endless, future trends, technologies, buzzwords that we are that really don't add to value. And so if you are going to implement, a highly targeted, next best action driven campaign through the most robust marketing automation tools that even leverage blockchain for tomorrow, you can be confident that actually that's being done to support your overall vision for where you want to head. So I think for me, this one is probably one of the most critical ones to follow. And I think rolled up all of these things together really should help you to arrive at true value from transformation beyond simply talking about technology and fluffy things for the future. So in summary, I can say just a few last points here. As I said, first and foremost, demystify digital transformation. Define it. Really critically define it. Work with your organization to define it so that everybody has a common view of what it looks like, and communicate. Define then where it will create value for the organization, tightly tie it to the company's strategy and ambitions. If you're on the one hand saying we believe digital transformation is to adapt to what our changing customer needs, to me that doesn't sound like a strategy. Really get to the point where you can clearly define what it looks like and what value you're going to be able to derive from it for your enterprise overall. Focus on strengthening relationships, as I said. All efforts from a digital commercial perspective, whether that's powering up your sales reps with new technology or launching and onboarding new self-service activities to fully automated marketing campaigns, should be done to strengthen your relationship between brand and customer. Avoid the COE silo trap, as I mentioned. Empower the decision makers. Really use the words to the truest sense, transform. And finally, use this concept of future back. And if I'm to roll all of these things up, just sort of in summary, to quote another one of my colleagues, Uri Gorin, who you're actually going to hear from shortly, I think done well, all of these things will mean that things are not only sexy for the press release and the buzzword that we've heard from the press release side, but they're also sexy for the P&L, and they're importantly sexy for the patient as well. And that, in the end of the day, is really what we're here for. So I hope as you guys launch into this second day of the next summit, you enjoy the sessions today as we progress forward. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me or contact me for any questions. Here are all my credentials on social, so feel free to be following me as well. I really wish you a really nice start to the day. And if there's one ask I have for everybody here, it's think about value through all of these points in these presentations today, because at the end of the day, transformation for transformation's sake isn't worthwhile. We really need to focus on creating value for, again, patients and our overall organization. Thanks, Dario. Thanks to everyone there in the group. And I wish everyone a very nice session. Take care.